Hello, I'm Peyton Sharp. Welcome back to the Theater Teachers Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about literacy instruction in our classrooms, specifically our theater classrooms, and how we can incorporate literacy into a theater classroom. All right, specifically we're going to be talking about ninth grade level, and our content area is specifically going to be play analysis. We're going to be diving into a script while also teaching literacy. Now, specific characteristics that are typical in a lot of common ninth grade classrooms would be reading levels, language differences, interest levels, attention disorders, and different worldviews. Now, it's hard to plan for those, but some tactics we can use. For reading levels, we want to pick something that can be accessible to all students. Language differences, we want to work with the school and make sure we're helping those students as much as we can. Interest levels, we want to pick a script specifically for play analysis that can apply to all students and is somewhat culturally relevant and new into the zeitgeist. Attention disorders, we want to have something that is attention grabbing and specifically plan for interruptions or pauses. And then different worldviews. Everyone's going to have a different worldview, and we have to be able to be ready to manage those different worldviews in our classrooms, no matter what the material is. All right, the specific ELA standard that I used for this lesson and this unit would be determine a theme or central idea of a text and analyze it in detail, its development over the course of the text, including how it emerges and is shaped and refined by specific details. Provide an objective summary of the text. So that's the ELA standard. And then the theater standard I used was describe the playwright's purpose for an intended audience in a theatrical work. Now these go hand in hand because they're both diving into the text and what the text means, where one is specifically asking for the central theme or idea from the reading, and the other is more of what did the playwright want the audience to feel, which those two can go hand in hand and definitely be a part of the same discussion. The script that I chose is Wicked the Musical, which is a fairly recent musical and very recent film. And so it's definitely very popular among students right now, and so it's a perfect kind of thing to have a play analysis discussion on, in my opinion. A strategy that I want to use to get students invested and get into it is kind of a pre-reading debate and conversation on good versus evil, and what is good and evil defined by, and how do you define good versus evil, and just kind of talking about the ideas of Glinda and Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West and the Good Witch, from like the Wizard of Oz knowledge versus wicked knowledge, and kind of how they're initially viewed in the Wizard of Oz as good and evil, and how this story elaborates on that and changes that, and how do we define good and evil. And so I think it would be a very good debate and initial conversation that would get kids invested. I think it's important to reflect on picking material that is culturally relevant and free of bias for our students. So you don't want to pick just any script or the same Shakespeare play to read with your class every single year. You know, if that's what you're using for your Shakespeare unit, then go ahead. But I think we can use play analysis as a kind of topic matter to dive into a lot of other plays and musicals that have a lot more to say and that are a lot more recent and engaging for students, like something that students would want to learn about and want to read about. And I think it's important to capitalize on those. And I think Wicked is a perfect example of a show that is good to read because it can be used for so many students. It's a fantasy world where, you know, it's not as like black and white modern day times, so we can kind of take a lot of different meanings from it without it just saying like this is the meaning. There's a lot of room to like dig deep into the content, which I think will be really good for this play analysis unit. I think as Christians, as Christian educators, when we're picking content, we want to make sure that it, like I was talking about, is culturally relevant and appropriate, and is free of bias for our students. And I don't want to just pick musicals and plays that are only for one specific group or can't really connect with another type of group. I want to make sure all of the things that I'm teaching are universally applicable to all my students. And I think specifically the topic of Wicked can be about so many different things. It's been used as an allegory for the LGBTQ community, for racism, for political unrest and crazy dictatorships. You know, there's a lot of different, and it's all also about propaganda. Like, there's so much you can grab from the story, and I think as Christians we need to be loving our neighbor and being very inclusive and thoughtful and mindful when we're picking content, and not just think about what is interesting and what can I relate to. It's all about having this selfless thinking about others mindset, and I think my choice in picking this musical to read for the play analysis unit very much fits that, because it's a play about the underdogs, but it's also a play about good versus evil and the power of perception. And it can be used for every single student, and so many great conversations can be had from that. And I think it's something that students will love to read and be very interested in, and I think it's the perfect choice for a play analysis. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time.